Welcome back. So I had a little bit of an issue with my computer, which is why this review is recorded a little bit later than I anticipate. But nevertheless, let's take a look in terms of the game that just finished 20 minutes ago between the US versus Panama, and then we'll do the review of the four games that happened in match week number 30. Originally, I was thinking of maybe kind of splitting into two different videos, but I decided that, you know what, let's just kind of combine it just to kind of make it a little bit easier in terms of uploading these videos. But as I said, let us actually begin talking about the game that just finished about 20 minutes ago, which is the US versus Panama. And anytime when the US have a bad performance, and in this case probably the worst performance that they had in the World Cup qualifier, and one of the worst performance under Greg Berhalter, I still try my best to find some positive. And this game really kind of tested me in terms of maybe finding some positive. And I guess maybe the two positive I can come up with is that, at least when you look at the standings of the CONCACAF World Cup qualifier, the US is still in second place and is still in that position where they are going to be qualifying into the 2022 World Cup in Qatar. And the second positive you could say is that in 3 days the US gets to play against Costa Rica, and they can get a win in that one in Columbus, then it maybe can wash away in terms of this bad performance that the US has against Panama. But besides that, yeah, that is really kind of the only positive you can come up with, because everything else about this game is just basically negative. I mean, this was just, like I said, probably the worst performance that the US has had in this World Cup qualifying stage. Probably even worse than the opening game in the World Cup qualifying stage where they drew 0-0 against El Salvador, because at least they got a point out of that game, even though they didn't play well. This game, they didn't even get a point out of this one, and kind of deservedly did not get a point out of this one, because, from minute 1 to 90, it just felt like they didn't want to be there. And I also don't know whether or not if this US team maybe kind of got a little bit overconfident coming into this game, and maybe, that game against Jamaica, where I thought they played probably the best in this World Cup qualifying stage, maybe that game maybe led to a little bit of a false hope that everything was going to be super easy for the US, because that was not the case in this one. And, I also got to give credit to Panama. They definitely play hard in this game, and they definitely play their hearts out, and well, he deserved to get all 3 points. But at the end of the day, in a U.S. perspective, there's got to be a lot of question that has to be asked after this game. And I know a lot of people are going to solely blame this game on Greg Berhalter because of the tactics that he set up was completely all wrong. The lineup he set up was completely wrong, and also the substitution that he has, at least for most of them, was also completely wrong. But I think you can also put the blame on some of these players too, because at the end of the day, a head coach can only do as much to kind of make sure a team can perform on the field. It's all still up to these players to, of course, perform at the best level, and it just feel like everyone on this US team was just not performing at their best level. And again, this goes back to what I said earlier, of the fact that I wonder whether or not if some of these players got a little bit too overconfident and think they can just walk into Panama City to get all 3 points. And if that's the case, then they probably forget that, yeah, in past history, when the U.S. do go to play World Cup qualifying in the Central American region, they tends to do very badly. And this was an example of it, and probably one of the worst performance that they ever play on the road against a Central American team. But in terms of looking at the starting 11, where I talked about earlier, it was just completely wrong. But in some way, I do understand why Berhalter decided to go with kind of a rotated squad with Matt Turner, Shaq Moore, Mark McKenzie, Walker Zimmerman, George Bello, Kellen Acosta, Yunus Musa, Sebastian Lletget, Paul Arriola, Jarzy Zardes, and Tim Wade. Because, when you have 3 games in 7 days, you simply cannot put your best starting 11 every single game. Like, you're literally just going to run them down if you're going to do so. But that being said, when you also look at the starting 11 that Greg Berhalter feel, I think this also kind of just brings to a point where maybe the U.S. doesn't have as much depth as we thought it is. I mean, I know before there's been praised the fact that the U.S. not only have a really good starting 11, but they also have players that can come in and can be that next man up, and they are a deep squad. I think after this game, it's kind of proven that kind of theory is completely wrong, because it's clear that when this team does not have their best starting 11, that's when things kind of start to kind of unravel a little bit. But in the first half, a lot of possession early for Panama, as they were really on the front foot early in this game. And I thought early on the U.S. looked sloppy in possession, and there was just way too much giveaway. As for some reason there's a fly on the board right now. I'm probably gonna have to let that one out once I finish talking about this game and switching to the second board, which is look at the MLS game that happened during international break. But yeah, going back to this, the U.S. looked sloppy in possession, and there was just way too much give up way in the midfield. And I thought at first, well, yes, that of course is the case, but maybe it's just for them to kind of just try to get into the game, and knowing the fact that some of these players are kind of not regular starters for this team, maybe they're just kind of getting that butterfly feeling out of their stomach. But in the 14th minute, Blackburn just could not toe poke that one in from close range, as that was really the game first chance, and Panama almost made it 1-0. But before Turner did push a dangerous cross from Berenis, I think that's how you pronounce, on the corner. One thing that I've seen Panama did in terms of the set pieces, especially on the corner, is that they put in these very dangerous ball into the box and very close to Matt Turner. In some way, there was a couple times that they would kind of maybe be trying to have their corner taker score a Olympic goal. And, Turner, for most part, did a good job in terms of palm that one away. But we'll talk about later on that the only goal of this game was because of because of a dangerous cross that was coming into the box from a corner. But in the 33rd minute, Panama probably had their best opportunity when Gondola actually went through on goal, but Matt Turner make a big save to rob him there, although the goal wouldn't have counted either way, because the flag actually went up as soon as Turner denied Gondola, who was through on goal. And I also kind of wrote, expect some creative player come off the bench in the second half, because, again, the first half, there's just no creativity whatsoever from this U.S. And in general, it just felt like it was a mess with how the U.S. was playing. And in some way, they were kind of fortunate the fact that it was still 0-0 up to that point. Turner then denied Berenis again, this time from 14 yards out. And we head to halftime 0-0 after just such an uninspiring performance for the U.S. But, even though it was like 0-0 at the first half, and I know there's going to be a lot of doomers out there that's going to say that, yeah, this has just been a terrible performance. Why not? We just going to say Berhalter out because of that. I was hoping, heading into the second half and knowing how the U.S. throughout this World Cup qualifier seems to do well in the second half, and almost kind of like are a second half team with just pretty much all the goals that they scored so far for this World Cup qualifier came in the second half. I trust the fact that the U.S. was going to maybe turn up in the second half. And, the reinforcement did kind of eventually came as Adams and Aronson was summoned from the bench. Though I did still thought that in the beginning, the U.S. still kind of looked very disorganized in the midfield. And that at least early on, it definitely did not make me think that, with some of the substitution that was made, and especially, as I mentioned, how the U.S. is eventually going to get going in the second half. That kind of didn't seem like that was the case in the first 5 minutes, although it kind of started getting a little bit better until Panama scores. And this happened in the 54th minute when Anibal Godoy, the Nashville midfielder, scored from Davis. Now, originally, they mentioned the fact that this probably should have been an own goal on Zardes, because it looks like it kind of last touch off him, but they did show a couple of replay of this goal, and it seems like Godoy just got a piece of that, and it kind of took a deflection off of Zardes. Now, whether or not if Godoy actually hit that one on target with that slight touch is definitely up for debate, but nevertheless, Panama wouldn't care. They were up 1-0 in this game, and that was a crucial goal too, because, like I said, the U.S. kind of started to build a little momentum, and then that goal happened, and I think this goal really started to kind of cause them to once again panic a little bit and started to kind of chase the game. But in the 57th minute, Acosta tried to tie it up quickly for the U.S., but he puts it wide from 20 yards out. Before I mentioned 62 minutes in, the U.S. still have 0 shots on goal up to that point, and they turns out they actually had 0 shots on goal throughout the full 90 minutes of this game. I mean, that's just pretty much sums up how they just did not have anything going on the attacking end. But in the 67th minute, there was definitely a concern for Panama, but especially for Nashville SC fan when they saw Honorable Godoy had to be stretchered off of an injury. I'm not quite sure exactly what kind of injury that he has, but if you're a Nashville fan, that is definitely not a good side, considering the fact that Godoy has been such a rock in that Nashville defense, or in that Nashville midfield this season. But in the same time, when Godoy was stretchered off, the U.S. started to bring on the cavalry as Pepe, Rodon, and Yetland was summoned in this game. And this is when I think, okay, here we go. This is when the U.S. are going to finally get their chance to get the equalizer. And it looked like that was going to the cage just 3 minutes in, as Pepe almost made an instant impact after he of course missed just wide from 12 yards out. And as the time winds down, the U.S., they kind of still look very flat on the attack. And again, this is why I've just said that maybe the U.S. can start to get going, but it just kind of never did. They still look very flat on the attack, and it almost feels like there's just no sense of urgency whatsoever. And that kind of also helped Panama too, because Panama, they were also trying anything and everything to time waste, but in some way I didn't think they kind of go completely full CONCACAF shithousery. I mean, there were times where you see some players that kind of was trying to fake injury. I know there was that one time where one of their players literally had to be stretchered off, and then he kind of got confused, like, wait, why am I stretchered off? I'm okay, but they still kind of stretchered him off to the side. And then of course during stoppage time, where there was actually 7 minutes of stoppage time, which even though it definitely didn't feel like a lot, considering the fact that there was definitely a lot of delays during the last 10 minutes of the game, I thought it was still generous, considering the fact that I've seen before where in these CONCACAF kind of matches, sometimes when it is especially going against an American team, they usually will just kind of put 3 minutes of stoppage. Now, that being said, even with the 7 minute of stoppage, there was a bunch of drunk pitch invaders started to kind of join the party and started to kind of waste more time and kind of almost part of the CONCACAF shithousery. I mean, it's not a CONCACAF game unless if there's going to be like pitch invader trying to kind of have fun and trying to help their home team a little bit. And also to nobody's surprise, literally at the 7 minute of stoppage time, the referee blows for the full-time whistle. Like, honestly, I can't even be mad at that point, because, I knew for sure that CONCACAF and these referees were going to kind of screw things up. Because remember those pitch invader that kind of caused like 2 or 3 minutes delay during stoppage time? Yeah, we forget that they didn't exist, and that the fact that we only kind of play like maybe 3 or 4 minutes of that 7 minute of stoppage time, and we didn't even think about trying to award a little bit extra just to give the U.S. a chance to maybe get an equalizer. But yeah, in the end, as I said, Panama, of course, getting a 1-0 lead. I mean, if you're new to CONCACAF, I'm pretty sure that must drive you nuts. But since I have watched a lot of CONCACAF matches, especially the CONCACAF Champions League, I'm almost at a level where I accepted the fact that, yeah, I knew the referee is going to blow for the full-time whistle, even though during stoppage time, there's a lot of shenanigans that was going on, and it should be added on. But judging by past CONCACAF games, especially when an American team is involved, they're not going to add that on. And indeed, as I said, this was another example where they just blow the whistle at the 7 minute of stoppage time. And yeah, Panama, a historic night for them, getting their first ever World Cup qualifier win over the U.S. in this one, as they won 1-0. And the shots in this one, 8 shots compared to just 5 the U.S. had. No shots on goal compared to the 4 that Panama has. 2 shots off target for the 4 that the U.S. had. 2 shots that was blocked for the 1 that the U.S. had. And possession-wise, 50% for both of these teams. But yeah, at the end, I think the only thing that I will say, besides repeating myself of how bad this performance is that they just need to move on. Like, I know there's going to be a lot of doomers that's going to say that this is kind of the performance is the reason why the U.S. is not going to make it to the World Cup. But I've seen before where this team has responded well, and it's going to be very important in that game against Costa Rica on Wednesday in Columbus, that they need to of course course, respond. I mean, if they don't respond in that game, then yeah, maybe there could be some question again of whether or not what is going on with this team. But you know, as I said, they just got to move on in that next game and just have that focus that they can't just take anything for granted. Like you simply in World Cup qualified, you cannot underestimate even some of the weakest team in the region. And I'm not saying Panama is actually a weak team. I mean, Panama went to the World Cup in the last cycle, and they proved that they're definitely a team that shouldn't be underestimated. But at the same time, you know, I really hope in the future the U.S. don't really just overconfident and just underestimate their opponent, because it feels like we've been saying this so many times with the U.S. whenever they play a Central American team, where they just simply cannot just show up and just maybe do the bare minimum and walk out with all 3 points. You know, nowadays these Central American team will be really up for it when they play some of the powerhouses of the CONCACAF region. And again, I gotta give credit to Panama. They showed up in this game. The U.S. didn't, and it's unsurprised they were able to get the 1-0 victory. But that being said, I am now going to switch boards and look at the next 4 games, which are the 4 games that happen that are the MLS Match Week number 30 game during the international break. Alright, so the first of 4 games that we're going to talk about of the MLS game that happened in Match Week number 30, aka games that happened during the October international break, is the Red Bulls versus Inter Miami. And remember a couple of weeks ago when the Red Bulls was on that terrible run where it looked like playoffs is started to slip away from them, and it seems like the streak is going to finally come to an end this year where they have made it to the playoffs in 11 consecutive seasons. Well, fast forward a couple of weeks ago, they're in the playoff hunt again. And it is pretty clear that they are definitely not going down without a fight to remain their playoff streak alive after getting a 1-0 victory against Inter Miami. Although, in the first 15 minutes of this game, not much really happened. I mean, you know, I was also kind of watching this game between the Union versus FC Cincinnati, which, by the way, I actually took a nap when this game was taking place, and by the time I woke up, I think it was like 4:30, and I was actually watching this game and also this game at the same time. Well, actually, no, I didn't wake up at 4:30. I woke up at 5 o'clock, and I was kind of like watching this one and also this one at the same time as I prepared to do my ground hop a little bit later. So yeah, that's why I kind of didn't really see what happened in the first 15 minutes of this game. And usually when I watch 2 games at a time, and when I didn't pay attention to what happened to the other game for majority of the part, it's probably because there was really nothing happen, and that was of course the case. Now, eventually, the first shot on goal did happen in the 15th minute, but it was a weakly hit shot that Carmona hits it straight to Marsman before Robinson missed high from 10 yards out, and then Chapman puts it high from long range, and all of a sudden the chances were starting to come for both of these teams, but it was actually the Red Bulls, the one that gets the first goal, as Patrick Klimala, who has been red hot in these last couple of games, he scored from Gutman to make it 1-0 in favor of the Red Bulls, and really after that goal, this is when the Red Bulls kind of took over, and it seems like they just kind of had the momentum in this game, and Miami was just looking second best. Like, they were literally just chasing shadow after they go down 1-0 in this game. Almost was 2-0 when Marsman absolutely robbed Fernandez, who was trying to kind of chest that one into the back post, but we do head to halftime with the Red Bulls leading 1-0 over Inter Miami. Now, in the second half, Miami actually kind of woke up a little bit, as LGP had a long-range effort that goes into Rosette, but Shea did have a big opportunity as he rifles it wide on the volley from close range. But there was no doubt that Miami was looking to try to push for the equalizer, though after I just wrote that, the post actually denied Klimala and the Red Bulls the second goal, and the Red Bulls, you know, despite in the first 7 minutes wasn't at their best, they almost kind of score against the run of play to make it 2-0. Then there was a shout for a penalty from the Red Bulls that was not given just 1 minute later, before Miami thought that they got the equalizer in the 61st minute when Gonzalo Higuain basically put the ball in the back of the net, but the goal, of course, was disallowed for offside. And I like how Higuain was very upset about that call, even though when you look on the replay, it was pretty clear that he was in an offside position. And I think maybe later on when he looked that back on tape, he realized that, yeah, it was kind of dumb for him to be that upset about an offside call when he was clearly in offside position. And I get that, you know, these players are very competitive, and anytime when they had a goal that was disallowed because of offside, they're going to be very upset about it. But yeah, I mean, Higuain, you know, you're well offside. You don't really need to express that much frustration, even if it's during kind of the game. But that being said, you know, also after that, I think not only Higuain was angry at the linesman, but he kind of got a little bit of a shoving match, I think, with Fernandes there or Duncan. And in fact, just a couple of minutes later, Duncan was also involved with some temper flare situation. You know, LGP, who is the master of instigating, well, he basically instigated this situation. He was going nose to nose with Duncan, kind of having choice words with each other. But in the end, both of these players were kind of separated, and I think one of them actually got a yellow card. I think it was Kyle Duncan, the one that gets the yellow card, even though I feel like maybe LGP should have got it, consider he kind of instigated that situation. But as the time winds down, Miami really started to control the possession, and the Red Bulls, they were kind of just sitting back and trying to hold on to this 1-0 lead, and in some way, they did a good job in terms of doing so, because Miami really did not have a lot of opportunity late in this game. The best opportunity that they had was literally the last kick of the game, when Vasilev heads it straight to Cornell, and right after when Cornell gathered that one, the full-time whistle was blown, and the Red Bulls were able to walk away with all 3 points as they won 1-0 against Inter Miami. And the shots in this one, 13 shots committed, 7 that Miami has, 5 shots on goal committed, just 1 that Miami has in this game, and that 1 shot came at the last kick of this game. 3 shots off target for both of these teams, 5 shots that was blocked with the 3 that Miami has, and possession-wise, 53% possession compared to 47% possession that Miami has in this game. And yeah, for the Red Bulls, they're back in the playoff hunt. They're only 3 points below the red line right now, and if they can continue this hot streak that they are in right now, they can definitely make that Eastern Conference playoff race very interesting. I mean, when you look at the standings of the Eastern Conference, things have started to kind of separate a little bit, but one thing that hasn't separated is the playoff race, and like I said, it's going to be very interesting to see some of these teams below the red line, like Atlanta United and the Red Bulls, continue to be hot, and that's going to put a lot of pressure on those teams that is just above the red line right now to continue to win, so that they don't drop points and start losing their lead in terms of being above the red line. But for Miami, yeah, I mean, they are heading into see you next season mode, and I kind of talk about this in terms of the preview, where this is a game between 2 teams that are desperate to try to get 3 points to get themselves into the playoff race. And for Miami, you kind of sense that this was a must-win for them if they want to get themselves back into the playoff race. They didn't win in this game, and you know, again, they look like they're in that see you next season mode, and it's just such a shame because they had that good run back in August, and it looks like things were getting better, and then it just seems like that was false hope, and now they're kind of back in that form that they were in the beginning of the season. That kind of is the reason why it kind of put them behind the 8 ball and kind of had to dig themselves out of a hole to try to get them into this playoff race in the Eastern Conference in the first place. But now moving on, in terms of the next match, is Cincinnati versus the Philadelphia Union. So another team that is red hot in the Eastern Conference is the Philly Union. And what's interesting about this game is that Cincinnati was actually the better team. But when Cincinnati is the better team, you know for sure that they're probably going to lose, because that's how it is this season. And that, you know, this game was another game that kind of just sums up Cincinnati's season and really sums up their luck in terms of being in MLS ever since they came into the league, where again, they had so many opportunities to score goals in this one, and they only were able to find a way to score one late in this game, and even then, you know, they just could not find a second goal or even create any chances after they got that goal back to really trouble the Union in this one. But 2 minutes into this game, Kubo puts it high over the bar on the volley, as I thought Cincinnati was on the front foot early, but just as I wrote that, T-Town was able to deny Sergio Santos from 15 yards out before Brenner went through on goal, but just missed wide, and that's kind of the frustration with Brenner this season, because as much as Brenner, when you look at his stats, you know, he's actually done pretty well as a number 9 compared to previous number 9 on the Cincinnati team. There's been time where he just missed some of the most easiest chances, and that was just one of those. In the 15th minute, there was definitely concern if you're a Union fan seeing Sergio Santos forced to sub off what seems like a hamstring injury. But the good news is at least they get a good sub to replace him in Quinn Sullivan coming into this one. I mean, as much as Union fans will be kind of disappointed seeing Santos being subbed off and probably going to be out for this team for a couple of weeks. At least they get to see the youngster Quinn Sullivan. And by the way, the Union, I talked about this before. It doesn't matter if the Union are playing their best team or maybe just putting their kits out there. This is the most dangerous team when they put out a second team, because they have so many talented kind of youngster in this team that can make some impact, and the youngster for this team definitely made some impact in this one. But in the 15th minute, right after when Santos was forced to be subbed off, Kubo heads one straight to Matt Freese. I thought Freese had a good game and certainly makes some big save in this one to keep Cincinnati at bay for the most time. Acosta then drill a free kick wide from 22 yards out before Barriel hits the side netting from close range. And Cincinnati, they should be leading 1-0 with some of the chances that they've been getting, but there's just too many wasteful chances in front of goal, and kind of just that's been the case for majority of the game this season. Shapilko then hits one that goes straight to Teton before Freese absolutely robbed Atunga, who was clean on goal in that moment. But again, Matt Freese making a big save there to deny Atunga a chance for Cincinnati to get the opener before Barriel drive one wide from 21 yards out. And it looks like this game was going to be heading scoreless heading into halftime, but right as the whistle was about to be blown, Shabilko would score to make it 1-0 in favor of the Union, and really was kind of against the run of play because the Union didn't have a lot of chances, and it just feels like Cincinnati was knocking on the door, but it's just kind of a sucker punch goal for Cincinnati, which is something that they kind of suffer a lot so far in most of the games that they played this season. Now, in the second half, despite that sucker punch goal, they did kind of get themselves back up and were looking on the front foot again, looking to try to get the equalizer. Acosta tried to toe poke it in past Freese, but Freese was able to just get off his lines in time to smother that one away. Before 3 minutes later, it will be 2-0 in favor of the Union, and it's another youngster that scores a goal in Paxton Aronson. I've always rated him, and that I think he's gonna definitely gonna be almost just as good, if not maybe even better than his brother Brendan Aronson is going to be with the Union. But he scored here from Hario and Elliott to make it 2-0 in favor of the Union. Brenner then puts a weak shot that goes straight to Matt Freese. I mean, Brenner, he is going to be very frustrated the fact that he didn't even score a goal in this one, because he had so many opportunities to score at least one in this one. Freese then denied Acosta from close range to the 64th minute. Another guy that's got to be frustrating is Lucho Acosta. He also had a couple of opportunities that he would definitely like to have back. And again, these missed chances really kind of just sums up Cincinnati luck this season. But in the 81st minute, they eventually do get their deserved goal that they've been looking for a long time. And it's actually a former Union player that scores the goal for them. Harris Madunian scores in the 81st minute to make it get 2-1 in favor of the Union, and kind of sets up a grandstand finish in the last 10 minutes. But like I said, even though Cincinnati did push late for the equalizer, they really didn't create a lot of chances to really trouble Matt Freese late in the game. And the Union able to comfortably walk away with a 2-1 win against Cincinnati. As the shots in this one, 15 shots compared to 11 that the Union has. Both teams had 6 shots on goal, 6 shots off target for the 2 that the Union has. Both teams had 3 shots that was blocked, and possession-wise, 63% possession compared to 37% possession that the Union has in this game. And also with this win, the Union is actually pretty close of potentially catching Nashville for that second spot. And throughout this season, I talk about how it seems like New England obviously is the class of the East, they're going to finish first, but I also talk about how Nashville looked like they're going to secure the second position. But ever since how Nashville kind of hasn't been doing that well in these last couple of games, and that the Union has been just red hot, they're starting to close that gap on Nashville to second place. I think the gap is only now down to just 2 points. But yeah, this Union team, it's hard to believe that. Remember how after they got eliminated by Club America in the CONCACAF Champions League, and they would drop all the way down to 9th place, and everybody in the Union fan base was panicking because they've seen before where CCL team go deep into that competition, and they just kind of punt the season for after they got eliminated. That's just not been the case. I mean, this team, if anything, has got stronger ever since they got eliminated by Club America, and it's definitely a team that they can continue this hot streak. No one wants to play this team when playoff time actually comes. But now, moving on, in terms of the next match, speaking of a team that no one wanted to play in playoff team, and that, of course, is the Seattle Sounders, who has confirmed that they are going to be making the playoffs. I mean, it's pretty obvious that the Sounders were going to make it to the playoffs. I mean, even in the beginning of the season, you probably say that the Sounders are definitely going to make it to the playoffs. But, this pretty much confirms it after winning 4-1 against the Vancouver Whitecaps, and also in the process, they also make some history as become the first ever MLS team to make it to the playoffs in 13 straight seasons. And what's this game that the Sounders had against the Whitecaps just kind of shows you that not only the fact that they have a very dangerous starting 11, but their bench is also very good, and that this also shows that this Sounders team, not only it's a good team, but if it's a team that has depth, that is a really bad news for the rest of the Western Conference. And in this game, at least for majority part of this game, they absolutely throttled the Vancouver Whitecaps, and they kind of did that in the first 15 minutes of this game, as 5 minutes in, Shane O'Neill would score from Rowe and Paulo to make it 1-0 in favor of the Sounders. Could have been 2-0 just 2 minutes later, as Montero puts it wide from long range, and Seattle was just all over the Whitecaps early in this one. And unsurprisingly, they would make it 2-0 not long after, as Benezet would score from Bruin and Rowe to make it 2-0 in favor of the Sounders. Benezet had a really good game in this one, and you could also say that he probably could have had a hat trick in this one because he had a lot of chances to score. And Benezet has been kind of a guy that's been lacking confidence with the Sounders, but you just kind of feel like after he scored this goal, not only the fact that he has got his confidence back, but he was definitely looking lively in this one, because in the 16th minute, Youngworth had to clear Benezet's shot off the line, and then on the follow-up, Madrana almost throws one in from long-range effort. We know Jimmy Madrana can definitely strike those long-range effort. But as much as Seattle was absolutely dominating this game, and it definitely looked like this was going to get really ugly for the Whitecaps, as I said here, where their back line basically was just non-existent in the first 16 minutes of the game, they almost got themselves back into it, as Caicedo actually struck the post in the 17th minute before Hassel had to deny Benezet from 15 yards out. And they also show on the stats on the Sounders feed that the Sounders were already up 5-0 in terms of shots in this game. But that being said, after when the Whitecaps just got absolutely blitzed in the first 20 minutes, they kind of started to settle down a little bit and started to kind of limit the chance that the Sounders have. And in some way, I guess maybe it's a combination of them finally getting that back line organized after it was just an absolute mess in the first 20 minutes. But it's also a combination of the fact that maybe the Sounders kind of put their foot off the gas a little bit too much, because they were made to pay right on the stroke of halftime when the Whitecaps were able to get one back. And it's Brian White continue his hot scoring form fresh off the hat trick, as he scored from Ryan Gull to make it get 2-1 in favor of the Sounders. And all of a sudden, the Sounders, despite their dominance, they were heading into halftime only having that 1-goal lead, and you're just thinking maybe, just maybe, the Whitecaps can do it, because we've seen before this team, the last time they faced against each other, the Whitecaps were able to make it 2-0 in favor of the Sounders heading into the second half, only for the Sounders to kind of rescue themselves for a draw. We know the Whitecaps do well this season against the Sounders, but unfortunately that hope was all gone in the second half, because in the 55th minute, Will Bruin would score for Montero and Rowe to make it 3-1 in favor of Seattle. And after this third goal, you can definitely sense that the Sounders were not making that same mistake that they made in the first half, which is put their foot off the gas, because they were looking to try to get more, as Montero goes for a long-range effort that just missed high, before João Paulo trying to curl her from long range that just missed the outside of the post. I mean, João Paulo is probably one of the most, if not the most dangerous long-range guy in this league, because you know that when he strikes that one from long range, and if you do not even think about closing down Joao Paulo, yeah, you're definitely going to be made to pay. But like I said, the Sounders, they were not letting off. They were looking to try to get that fourth goal. Hassel denied Benazet from 17 yards out in the 62nd minute before Hassel denied Sissoko on the header. By the way, on the Sounders feed, I think they keep pronouncing Hassel name Hasso or something like that, which I don't know if that's actually the correct pronunciation, but I know before when I watched the Whitecaps feed, they pronounce it Thomas Hassel, and even during the MLS's back tournament, which is where Thomas Hassel really make it his name. That's kind of how they pronounce it. So it's kind of weird that the Sounders feed was kind of pronounced it in a little differently. But nevertheless, in the 69th minute, it looked like it was 4-1 in favor of the Sounders, as Yeimar actually put the ball into the back of the net, but unfortunately he was in an offside position when the ball was coming into the box, so therefore the game remains at 3-1. And then Joao Paulo, again, a guy that is very dangerous from outside the range. He also just missed wide from 19 yards out. But then Fry had to rob De Home, as, Vancouver, again, they almost score against the run of play. And then this is kind of where, once again, the Sounders kind of let off a little bit, and that it kind of allowed the Whitecaps a chance to get themselves back into it. Fry, in the 76th minute, almost made a rare mistake as he spilled a cross that was coming in, and Brian White was literally right there to capitalize on it, but he could not put it on target. And I even wrote, the Sounders got to be careful. They do not want to concede the second goal to the Whitecaps and give the Whitecaps belief that they can maybe come from behind and get a miraculous point on the road. There was a scramble in the Sounders box, but unfortunately no Whitecaps player were able to capitalize it. Vancouver was definitely pushing for one back as the time winds down, but eventually the Sounders pretty much put this game out of reach in the 90th minute, as Leo Chu scored his first goal for the Sounders from Montero to make it 4-1 in favor of the Whitecaps. And yeah, this is one that I think Hassel would love to have back, because, yes, it was a nicely driven shot there from Leo Chu from about 10 yards out, but it was kind of hit straight toward him in one that I think if Maxime Crépeau was in for this game, he of course would have saved that. And yeah, Hassel definitely did not have one of his best game in this one, giving up the 4 goal. Although I won't completely blame him as the reason why he lost the game for the Whitecaps, because in some way he also kind of got hung out to dry with the way that the Whitecaps defense pretty much did not even want to show up in this game against the Sounders. I think they were probably afraid of the rain, because this game was raining throughout the entire 90 minutes. Though that being said, if you're afraid of the rain, then why are you in Vancouver? Vancouver is another city that it gets a lot of rain. Oh wait, no, I just remember BC Place is a retractable roof stadium. Oh, that makes sense why they probably decide not to show up when it's kind of raining a little bit. But anyway, the shots in this one, 21 shots committed, 11 that Vancouver has. I don't know why I wrote Minnesota there. I mean, it got so bad that it kind of reminds me of how the Loons got absolutely battered by the Sounders. Maybe that's the reason why I wrote that. But 10 shots on goal for the 3 that the Whitecaps had, 7 shots off target for the 4 that the Whitecaps had. Both teams had 4 shots that was blocked, and possession-wise, 52% possession compared to 48% possession that the Sounders has in this game. And like I said, this performance has to give a lot of fear to the rest of the Western Conference, with the way that this wasn't even the strongest Sounders team. Like, they were missing starters like Rui Diaz, both Rodon's brother, and Ladero, and they still were looking just so clinical in front of, well, at least for most of the time, looking very clinical in front of goal, and just kind of put up a 4 spot against a Whitecaps team that, this is a Whitecaps team that's been on a hot streak, but this was definitely a game where they just got absolutely roll over, and it's going to be interesting to see how they're going to respond, because, they're not out of it in terms of the playoff race. Because moving on into the next game, which is between Minnesota and the Colorado Rapids, and the Loons, of course, drop all 3 points in the game that I look at as the game in hand that they had overall of those teams, which means that it's only a 1 point lead that they had above the red line against the Rapids. And yeah, thank you for watching. Hope you guys enjoy this. Okay, we'll talk about this game. And honestly, all I'll say about this game is that this was probably the most dejected that I've looked after watching a Loons loss ever since they lost that game against the Sounders in the Western Conference Final. Like I couldn't say anything after this game because of how bad things have kind of gone. And in some way, I would also would say that this kind of was almost similar to what happened in the collapse that they had against the Sounders in the Western Conference Final, where, you know, for the majority of the game, the Loons were by far the better. Well, I wouldn't say they were by far the better team, because there was some spell where the Rapids were controlling this game, but it looked like they were going to get themselves a good win, and they even had a man up for the last 30 minutes of the game, because the Rapids actually went down to 10 men, and then inexplicably in the last 17 minutes, they just completely imploded in a fashion that, again, I've not seen them imploded like this ever since they lost to the Sounders in that Western Conference Final match last year. But in the first half, you know, things were off to a great start for Minnesota, as Hunu was able to score from Fragapane and Reynoso. Hunu finally gets the start in this game, and there's always been a lot of question of the fact that why exactly have Adrian Heath not put Hunu in the starting 11. Like, I understand Hunu hasn't been great ever since he arrived to this team, but I just feel like, you know, you shouldn't think about just benching a guy and just kind of lose all his confidence. And I really hope this goal kind of helped his confidence too, because, you know, again, his confidence is not that high coming into this one, and it was just such a key situation for him to kind of get going. And again, hopefully this will be the goal for him to finally start to get things going. But it was a very promising start for the Loons, as they really kind of controlled the first 15 minutes of this game. Yarbrough was able to deny Finley from the near post in the 22nd minute, before Nomini actually drive one that just missed wide from long range. And then Miller had to deny Nomini from 19 yards out, and this is when the Rapids really started to get back into this game. And even though as good as Minnesota looked in the first 25 minutes, I knew that it was probably not going to last for the full 90 minutes, because this is a Rapids team that has shown good resilient, and they have shown before that they just would not go away. Because in the 30th minute, Miller had to deny Warner from long range effort as the Rapids was pressing for an equalizer. Then Miller had to deny Nomini again, this time on the curler from long range, and I kind of wrote, Loons needs to ride out the storm and preserve a 1-0 lead heading into halftime, because if they give up this equalizer, things are going to get ugly heading into the second half. Now, thankfully, they were able to preserve a 1-0 lead heading into the second half. And in the second half, you know, things kind of got off to a good start for this team. I mean, I think maybe Adrian Heath said something to this team and said that they may be being a little bit too complacent late in that first half. And you know, it kind of fired up the team a little bit to try to search for that second goal. And their chances of potentially getting that second goal dramatically improved, because in the 57th minute, Danny Wilson was giving his marching order after he put a denial of goal score opportunity on Hunu, and that the Rapids was down to 10 men. Taylor did hit one straight to Yarbrough in the 61st minute, before Hunu basically flicked it over Yarbrough after he went through on goal. And I also kind of wrote, the Loons need the second goal, because as much as, yes, they are up a man for the remaining of this game, the Rapids is a team that just would not go away. And also knowing the fact that this is a team that has struggled in terms of playing up a man in the two prior times that they had a man up in this season, I just had a feeling that they need the second goal. But then in the 72nd minute, this is when the implosion began. Penalty was given to Colorado after VAR basically deemed that Miller brought down Barrios in the box. And I like how Kendra Deasley-Nolan tried her very best to say that, you know, maybe that's not a penalty. I need to, of course, look at it again, even though I kind of know that, yeah, she knows that's a penalty, but she's trying to kind of delay the inevitable and just tell the Loons faithful that, yeah, indeed it is a penalty. And in some way, I guess she didn't really need to do it, because when I look on the first replay, I knew instantly that was a penalty. Like, you know, Miller clearly brought down Barrios there. It's a stone penalty, and the fact that it wasn't given in the first play is kind of a little bit questionable, but at least they did go to VAR, and they did do it properly, considering, you know, VAR for both of these teams have not been friendly in the last game that they both of these teams were playing against their respective opponent last week. But this time, you know, they did get it right, and Cole Bassett was actually the one that steps up to take this penalty, and I was actually very surprised. Like, I think that you know, Bassett, with the way that he has just been so low in confidence, I just kind of surprised the fact that he was up there to step up the penalty. And when you have a player that is low in confidence and step up in a penalty, that probably is not a good recipe for success. And in some way, I was maybe kind of glad that Bassett stepped up, because I had a feeling he was going to miss it. But, you know, he actually didn't miss it. He actually puts it right to the top left. Well, actually not the top left, but the bottom left corner to tie the game for the Rapids. And, you know, certainly that goal is probably going to give him some confidence, although he didn't miss one big chance late in the game that maybe just show that maybe he's not back to his old self yet. But in the 71st minute, Fragapane did puts it over the bar as the Loons were looking to try to get that second goal. I mean, even with that equalizer going in, as much as I know it maybe stunned the team a little bit, I expect that, you know, they got to realize they're still a man up. They can get this second goal and retake the lead, but that's just not how it works, because in the 79th minute, after Barrios puts it wide into the side netting, and then Reynoso basically blazed it high on the volley, the Rapids took the lead in the 84th minute, and it's Barrios who scored from Lewis and Rosenberry, and Michael Barrios, he definitely had himself a game in this one, coming off the bench, and really was the reason to kind of really terrorize this Minnesota back line. In the 87th minute, as I mentioned a couple minutes ago, you know, Bassett had a big opportunity, and again, if this was the old Cole Bassett, he would have put that one into the back net. But because this is a Cole Bassett that's low and confident, he basically puts that one over the bar from 10 yards out. And, you know, I also felt the Loons were just getting absolutely ripped apart on the break. Like, I understand that they were going for it on the other end, but yeah, they got to also realize that Colorado has a really dangerous guy called Michael Barrios that can be very fast on the counterattack, and the fact that they didn't realize that was the case was also now the downfall of what turns out to be the killer goal for the Rapids, as in the 3rd minute of stoppage time, Estevez scores his first ever goal for the Rapids, as he scored from Barrios and Trusty to make it 3-1 in favor of the Rapids. And, you know, they showed a couple of camera of a lot of dejected Loons fans, and certainly a lot of Loons fans also leaving the stadium. And, you know, that couldn't be more true in terms of what I am feeling right now, and certainly what every Loons fans are feeling right now, because it's like we're playing against the Sounders again in the Western Conference Final all over again, where the team just imploded in the last 15 minutes and to lose a game. And also, I kind of even wrote, I don't think I've ever heard Allianz feel this quiet in the game. Like, you would be mistaken the fact that there was a game at Allianz Field if you didn't actually look at the footage when that goal, of course, went in. I mean, the entire crowd just completely went dead silent and just kind of in shock of the fact that the implosion happened again in this one. And yeah, in the end, as I said, the Rapids, of course, win 3-1 against Minnesota. And the shots in this one, the stats actually kind of backs it up. 20 shots compared to 16 that Minnesota has. 12 shots on goal compared to 3 that the Loons had. 8 shots off target compared to 5 that the Rapids had. 3 shots that was blocked for both of these teams. And possession-wise, 56% possession compared to the 44% possession that the Rapids has in this game. And, you know, the only thing that I will say that maybe is a little bit positive, and I'm going to try to do what I did we talk about the U.S. after losing 1-0 against Panama, is that at least Minnesota is still above the red line right now. But that gap between them and Vancouver remains at 1 point. And as I said, this was supposed to be the game in hand that they had. And the fact that they weren't able to win in this game to get themselves as high as 5th place in the Western Conference, yeah, there is definitely a concern that this team could potentially miss the playoffs. And this is kind of a game that it is going to be really hard to try try to kind of come back from. And the other thing that I will also say about this performance is that, you know, for a long time, I tried my best to not really join the Heath out brigade and just overly kind of criticize the fact that Heath basically get everything wrong and he should deserve to be fired from this team. But, you know, after this game, it's hard for me to not even think about just kind of join the brigade too, because everything that Adrian Heath did in this game was just completely wrong. Like, the tactics, especially when this team went up a man, was completely wrong. The substitution was especially wrong with the way that I just don't understand why he decided to sub off guys like Fragapane and Hunu and bring on Adi and Agudelo when those two guys basically made no impact in the last couple of games. And you also just subbed off your two most dangerous attacker throughout this one, and in some way it's almost like he's basically asking for this to completely backfire, and boy, it backfired in a big way in this one. And, you know, I just have a feeling if this team do not make it to the playoffs, and after all the money that they spent to invest in this squad, and that this is supposed to be a team that, when you look on paper, it should not be a team that is just fighting for the last couple of spot playoffs. You wonder if this team does not make the playoffs, whether or not if Adrian Heath could potentially be on the chopping block. And like I said, you know, I still feel like maybe it's going to be a little bit harsh if Heath eventually going to be fired at the end of the season. But knowing the fact that when you look at the league nowadays, and it seems like front office have just shown no patience whatsoever, where if you don't get the result and meet expectation, you're out of the door. And that's the same case I can see with this Loons front office, where, you know, if this team missed the playoffs, this will no doubt will be one of the biggest failure that they had coming in to the league. And that, you know, there could be a case that Adrian Heath could find himself in the chopping block. And again, I think a lot of Heath out brigade have always just said that, you know, the writings was on the wall, and that, you know, this is not the first time that this, of course, happened. But I would also kind of counter and say, well, this is maybe the first time where it really kind of imploded in a little bit. But even if that's the case, yeah, I mean, this is such a crucial show match. And I will give credit to the Rapids showing their resilience and fighting back here. But this was just more of just Minnesota just completely imploding. And this is why I said in the preview, I just worry that this team, even if they make it to the playoffs, I don't think they're going to do much. And that's kind of that's even worse feeling than not making the playoffs, because when you make the playoffs, you want to have that hope that your team can maybe make it deep into the playoffs, and it just doesn't seem like that is the case, unless if there's going to be a change in mentality and somehow they go into a good run down the stretch like they did last season, to give me the hope that this team can find themselves to be an MLS Cup contender again. But either way, hope you guys enjoy this video. If you do, make sure you guys like, smash the subscribe button. Let me know in the comments below, what do you think of all four of these games, and also the game that I talk about between the U.S. versus Panama, which, again, you know, to all the doomers out there that is dooming the fact that the U.S. are not making the World Cup, it's only one game. There's still a long way before the World Cup qualifying stages happen, and it's also not going to always be nice and rosy doing the World Cup qualifier. Like, I wish the U.S. can basically just go through the entire World Cup qualifier undefeated, or go through the entire World Cup qualifier without having to deal with these moments where there's some big question of whether or not if this team is good enough to potentially always dominate teams week in and week out. The reality is that's just not the world that we're living in right now, and it's really just kind of the reality of CONCACAF World Cup qualifier, where it's not easy, and you're going to have some growing pain along the way. And I just feel like this is just one of those games that is part of the growing pain, but at the same time, you want growing pain, but you also want some improvement. And this is why the next game, when the U.S. does play against Costa Rica in Columbus, let's just hope that they can, of course, get all 3 points to kind of erase the memory that we just witnessed about now an hour ago between the U.S. and Panama. But either way, hope you guys enjoyed this video. If you do, make sure you guys like, smash the subscribe button, and yeah, I, of course, will see you guys next time.